In the 5 seconds following the War Maiden's ultimate ability, the outburst of mana released a radiance that beamed towards the sky, unleashing a trail of blazes that burnt the field away, and left only a sea of corpses behind. However, Tiger was the only one who survived, having witnessed the 7th Venati's slaughtering everyone he cared about. So when he found her unguarded, he decided to risk his life, realizing this was the only way to not let their deaths go in vain. Only 4 arrows remained in his quiver, but after shooting 2 of them to neutralize her front line, she activated her sword's mana to fly above the fallen horses, charging directly towards him as she parried his 3rd arrow. But even as he fired his last shot, she slashed it in half before coming to point her sword down his face, telling him that her name is Eleonora Voltaria, and that he was now hers. The following morning, he woke up to a hot girl shoving her sword down his throat, but although he wished they could trade places, he remembered that he was now a prisoner. Inside of Ellen's office, she commanded him to forfeit Alsace, since he was the lord of that nation. But after hearing her brain-dead request, he asked Ellen if she was as dense as her assistant's tits.
What did he say?
However, she revealed that she had another special command to give onto him, before all the soldiers, as Tiger shot an arrow that flew outside of the shooting range. He realized that he was being set up as a mockery in front of the entire kingdom. Even so, when he had finally grasped how to control the defective bow, an assassin began running along the walls and aimed directly towards the princess. But as Tiger screamed for Ellen to take cover, she activated her bow's phantasm, allowing her to release a whirlwind that blocked the bolt and shattered it to pieces. So when the bandit began running away, Tiger asked Alicia if he could help, but when she told him that he was useless, he aimed and fired from a distance of 300 meters, hitting the assassin's foot. All of the soldiers wondered how he was able to control a bow they purposely ruined, so Ellen told him that his target practice was complete, and welcomed him to Zekted as her slave. The following day in her command room, she apologized about the broken bow he was given, revealing that she would be executing the 3 soldiers who ruined it to embarrass him. However, Tiger begged her to spare their lives because it was only a defective weapon, but saw the greatest weapons of mass distraction in his face. Seeing how he begged for the lives of his enemies, she thought he was the only brave person in the entire Brunish army, and confessed that she began falling for him after seeing his precision with the way he fired his arrows. Because on the night before the battle, she had scouted their hideout, and although her army was outnumbered 25,000 to 300 warriors, she wiped out all of his forces in half of a day. Even so, he was willing to face off against 7 soldiers alone, so she spared his life because she thought killing humanity's greatest archer was a waste, and went on to ask him to become one of her servants. However, he refused, telling her that he still had a home to protect, and people who were waiting for him to return. After leaving her office, he apologized to the bald ass for being forced to shave his hair, and look like a shiny shit stain. But the shit stain told him that shaving his hair was the greatest honor in his life. And after seeing his miraculous shot that saved the princess, he swore to shave his hair for the rest of his life to atone for ruining his bow. At the same time, one of the maids wished that Tiger's arrow would have penetrated deep inside of her body, and the other wished he would release his shots all over her face. Throughout the weeks, all of the hunters were shocked at his ability to triple shot a bullseye, and everyone begged him for archery lessons. But all the showering twinks hated him for stealing attention away from them. So he tried finding a place to shower alone, until he saw a baby dragon, but heard Ellen's voice telling him that it was Luni, her dragon pet.
Huh?
However, the worthless moron apologized for seeing her without any plot armor, but she asked him to turn around and join her.
私はお前が欲しい。
Yes! 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 Yes!
そのジスタートではなんだ男女が一緒に水浴びをするものなのか
No! No! No!
After fumbling the easiest bag in all of anime, he wondered why she said she wanted him, but if only he had discovered the sponsor of today's video, CyberGhost VPN, maybe he would have had the balls to say yes to her. If you have been geo-blocked from watching your favorite movies and content, and it's starting to feel like you're stuck in the prison realm, CyberGhost VPN easily unlocks all geo-restrictions, and would protect all your internet activity through a completely secure VPN tunnel. With CyberGhost VPN, you could change your online location to any region you want, could play every video game that has been blocked in your region, and even access blocked libraries of over 40 streaming services. Your options are unlimited with CyberGhost VPN. because with over 38 million users worldwide, along with an incredible rating from more than 20,000 people on Trustpilot, CyberGhost VPN easily passes as the best virtual private network in the entire world, all while protecting your IP address against hackers, and even encrypts your data against data brokers while using public Wi-Fi. With one subscription of $2.03 a month using the link in my description, you could use CyberGhost VPN across 7 different devices, and even share with family and friends. CyberGhost VPN is available for all platforms, with a 45 days money-back guarantee, and a 24/7 customer support to assist you in getting unrestricted access to all regions and to easily break out of the prison realm. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in my description to get the best deal for your devices, and join me in unlocking all geo-restrictions, including the world of plot development. Thank you to CyberGhost VPN for sponsoring me, because while I'm already unlocking all the restricted plot development areas for my next video, Tiger is still stuck as a worthless, ugly, hopeless, disgusting virgin.
Damn!
But when he heard a knock on his door, he saw Baldy Shitstain, telling him they captured a man from his kingdom. So when he saw Bertrand, he was glad to see that his assistant was still alive, but Bertrand told him that it was too early to celebrate, as Duke Thénardier's forces were advancing onto Alsace. Shocked by those words, he began marching towards the kingdom's gate until he saw Ellen, asking him where he thought he was going. At the same time, Thénardier commanded his son to lead the 3,000 soldiers onto Alsace, as he wanted to crush the weakness Tiger had created, and showed him the dragons he would be bringing along. Realizing that he was now powerful enough to destroy entire armies alone, Zion swore to burn away everything Tiger cared about. On the other side of the continent, as Tiger saw the revealing outfit Ellen was wearing, she told him that he shouldn't look away this time. However, he vowed to return as soon as he defeated the enemy's army and saved his people's lives. But she wondered how he would ever manage to do that. After all, he was only a single archer against an army of 3,000, so she told him that if he wanted to die this badly, then it might as well be here. He thought she was evil after all, but she grew disappointed that he had no idea why she was annoyed, so she told him to control his emotions before they ended his life. In that moment, he realized she could have killed him this entire time, and wondered if she was offering him a chance to save his country, so he began thinking with all of his brain, and realized exactly what would make her join his side.
兵を貸してくれ。
You didn't have to cut me off. I could never know we were nothing.
As all of them wondered what this brain-dead moron just said, Ellen started laughing at his bravery. But Tiger wondered why she was laughing when he built up more courage than his useless army. However, she thought she finally found the man she's been looking for, so she offered to help defend his country. But only if he gave her all of Alsace, along with his loyalty. So as Tiger agreed, Ellen raised her sword, commanding her army to begin the raid. Throughout the night, they began rushing to reach Alsace, but Ellen couldn't take her eyes off Tiger, remembering how as they put on their armor, he had come to her command room. However, she wondered why he was going into battle without any protection, and Alicia thought his protection was as useless as his face. But as she began combing his hair, Ellen wanted to make him look good before he died as well. After giving him the sideways for attention haircut, Ellen wondered if he was imagining her clothes off. However, she told him that he should call her beautiful first, so he said that she was so beautiful that if she was a sword, he'd put her in his mouth. As she grew embarrassed remembering those words, she realized her army was outnumbered 3-1. But Tiger revealed that he knew the layout of his land. Because of that, they could exploit all the choke points in the terrain, but she wished he would exploit her choke point. By the morning, Zion's forces were already a few hours away from his kingdom, and as all of Alsace evacuated to the temple, Titter remained in the mansion, wondering if Tiger will ever keep his promise of returning on the day when he left. Just then, the Thénardier's forces invaded the city, and began pillaging all of the buildings. However, Zion was disgusted that they were sheltering in a temple, but when he saw Tiger's mansion, he realized he found his source of entertainment. So after he arrived inside, Titta prayed for Tiger to give her courage and ran towards the stairs. But after Zion spotted her, she asked him to leave. However, he told her that he didn't hear her words, so when she screamed at him to leave, she remembered the years she spent growing up with Tiger, saying that she was willing to sacrifice her life to protect their home. Hearing those words, Zion began advancing towards her before slashing her apron off, saying that her legs were next. But as she started running to find a dagger, he parried it right away, before ripping her top off. She realized her life was about to end and begged for Tiger to come back, but when Zion heard that name, he told her that he was never coming back and tripped her onto the ground. But as he was about to torture her, Tiger's name was the only thing on her mind, as an arrow flashed across that threw Zion's hand away. As he looked up and saw the blood falling on his face, he began losing his mind, and Tiger screamed at Tita to jump down. Rushing closer on his horse, he narrowly avoided being killed, so he decided to leap off to catch his maid, while Ellen casted her sword's wind magic to save him from falling to his death. After levitating down together, Ellen told him to value his life more, but Tiger finally realized that her sword was able to control the wind. So she revealed that she had made a covenant with the spirit Arafar, but as the wind swirled around him, she realized that it had befriended him as well. However, he knew that he still needed to deal with Zion, but as her men advanced towards the mansion, he wondered why Tita's clothes were all destroyed. So she revealed that she wanted to save his bow, telling him that she had been waiting all this time for his return, and was glad that he finally did. Seeing them hugging, Ellen grew jealous, wondering if his type was the flat bitches that constantly cried. But in that moment, Tiger noticed an arrow and caught it at the last instant, before releasing a shot that struck the target's eye, ending his pathetic life. Although they were safe, the pressure from catching the steel had ripped his hand, so Tita used her skirt to bandage his wound. Even so, he told Ellen that he was still able to fight, so she commanded her forces to charge forward. But as he was about to follow them, he realized that his bow was broken after his last shot. However, Tita told him it was the time to use his sacred bow, and he remembered his father telling him it was bestowed upon them by the god of war. So he took it, and the aura that emanated from just the string being pulled began to influence the flow of nature around them. A few hours later, 300 of the enemy soldiers had been killed off, but the ones who escaped were reorganizing, as Ellen met with the war commanders. As she wondered where they could be camping, Tiger showed them a spot on the map and called it the Malsheim Plains. So at sunset, they arrived on the battlefield, and with the Nardir's formation proving infallible, the Zektid army decided to position 400 cavalrymen to face the army head-on, with Ellen and Tiger standing at their vanguard. As Ellen decided to draw her sword, she commanded her men to attack, as they all charged forward. With the Nardir's army already in formation, they launched a rain of arrows, but Ellen unleashed her sword's mana to repel them. Immediately, Tiger launched arrows that killed 3 soldiers, but as Ellen thought his powers were from another world, she began hacking through the front lines, killing the soldiers as she rode across. So as Tiger continued firing, he destroyed their Nardir's flag while annihilating more men. And with Ellen urging her men forward, their Nardir's forces charged back. As she sliced through the ranks, the men clashed swords, but when Bertrand gave Tiger a new quiver, he launched another shot. Just then, a loud horn began going off, so as their Nardir's forces advanced to a new position, a land dragon appeared before Ellen's troops, but she wondered how this useless group of losers managed to tame it. All along, the Nardir's forces had planned to send their dragon straight at the Zektid army while their cavalry attacked the flanks. When the dragon began advancing at them, 2 soldiers rushed to attack it, but it squashed their worthless bodies. As Tiger decided to take a shot, he realized the dragon's body was harder than steel, but when Zion's shitty ass face appeared, he began saying that his beast would tear them apart. At the same time, Alicia and her troops were already charging towards them, because while they intended to strike their Nardir's flanking unit to halt their advances, Ellen had moved to challenge the land dragon. When Tiger wondered what the technique was, Ellen told him that it was her most powerful skill which she never used against a human. But as the ugly stain told Alicia that new soldiers from the Nardir's main unit were approaching, Alicia commanded her army to withdraw, but the Nardir's men continued pursuing them, thinking they had the advantage. At that moment, Alicia whistled to signal another plan, so as ropes were raised across the hills, the Nardir's men began falling off their horses. Before they knew it, Alicia's troops began charging back. But as Alicia realized they only managed to achieve this success because the townspeople were willing to support Tiger, she thought they must have really loved him. At the same time, Ellen's troops had begun attacking again, But as Ellen wondered if the time was perfect, Tiger told her that it was the moment for the ambush. At that moment, they released all of their horses, so as a man told Zion that the enemy regiment were approaching from the rear. He said they were over 2,000 men, but with Zion's entire army having fewer than 600 men, he realized they couldn't possibly win the war, and realized that saving his life was the only thing he cared about. So when one of them tried suggesting they hold their ground, Zion punched his face, but the weak bastard began screaming from the pain. Even though the commanders knew this loser was a brain-dead clown, Zion continued commanding his forces to retreat, never realizing that Zektid's forces were using 2,000 unmanned horses to appear as though they were a larger army. So as the knights retreated, Ellen's troops continued thinning them down. Eventually, they broke through the 2nd Cavalry column, and with the main force getting pushed back, they made their way towards Zion. As Tiger screamed at him to surrender, he told him that he came to punish him for destroying his town and attacking his people. However, Zion began saying that his people were as useless as his disgusting face, and challenged Tiger to a duel. But as Tiger advanced forward, Zion told him to borrow a spear. With Tiger unfazed by this loser, he told him that his bow was all that he needed, but as he fired a shot, Zion said he was more useless than his aim. Even so, Tiger fired another shot, before hitting a third in the same spot. But as Zion began charging forward, Tiger took a final shot, launching the arrow with perfect precision to pierce Zion's arm, but got nicked across the face. As the loser began screaming, wondering how he got pierced, Ellen realized that Tiger purposely hit the same spot to pierce through the shield. When Tiger aimed again, Zion's army charged in to protect him, so as Ellen's troops charged back. Both armies began clashing swords, but Ellen told Tiger that the duel could have gone both ways. At that moment, the dragon took off into the sky, and as they realized that Zion was escaping, Tiger's bow began telling him to shoot the dragon. As he sensed the power inside of it, the memories of Tida's suffering flashed through his mind, so as he decided to take aim, Ellen noticed the mana beaming around his arrow and realized that her sword was lending it its wind magic. The sight of their fallen leader weakened the men's morale, so as Ellen raised her sword in triumph, she declared that Tiger had executed Zion. The following morning, after Tida baked bread for her master, she decided to wake him up. While they ate breakfast, Ellen revealed that she was going to return to her capital, and wondered how he was going to stop the war. But he had no idea. In Duke the Nardier's empire, the Nardier was angry at Gainlon's withdrawal from the battle after his defeat. But when his general wondered how they could eliminate Tiger and Ellen in the meantime, the Nardier told him to hire the Serash, a notorious group of assassins, and said he would pit another war maiden against Ellen. A few days later, Ellen revealed that she gained King Victor's permission to continue the war, but said he would claim Alsace if it became part of her territory. When Alicia offered to scout the mansion, Ellen began explaining to Tiger that their greatest threat was Lurie, who was one of the war maidens the Nardier might use. But after saying those words, Lurie burst into the room. Wanting to introduce herself, she told Tiger that she was the bearer of the cleansing spear. But as Ellen warned Tiger to stay away from her disgusting face, Lurie told Tiger that she came to speak with him. Before long, they began heading into the forest, but as Ellen and Alicia tagged along, Ellen said she couldn't leave the bitch alone with her man. When Tiger wondered what Lurie wanted to talk about, she decided to tell him that she was one of the Nardier's allies, but said Tiger stood no chance against him. Just then, Tiger spotted the trap before them, and as they managed to halt their horses, they began wondering if the enemies were assassins. As Ellen drew her sword, she realized they were targeting Tiger, as he barely dodged an arrow. So as the assassin leaped toward another tree, he blew a poison dart that Ellen parried, but Tiger launched a shot that nailed him into a tree. Noticing his tattoo, Lurie realized he was a Serash, but as another assassin tried attacking them, Alicia blocked his strike, before spilling his blood off. Before she knew it, a snake bit into her plot, but as Ellen sliced it in half, Tiger saved her from falling. In that instant, he began sucking the juice out of her massive cannons before she would die. But as the remaining assassins appeared, Lurie activated Lavia's to awaken her spear, summoning ice stakes to kill them at the same time. With a light stamp, Lurie made the ice disintegrate, but called Ellen a worthless failure for losing her focus, and after she rode off, they began riding to the nearest town. A few days later, after Alicia recovered, Ellen told her that Tiger saved her life by milking her plot, so she planned to give him a great reward. As the worthless moron walked to clean himself, he found Lurie in the hot spring, and she readied her spear to end his worthless life.
犬や猫に体を見られて
そう身を隠してくれ
You didn't have to cut me off. Say that like it never happened, that we were nothing.
The following day, Tiger continued feeling the sting from Lurie's thick long staff. So to make up for it, he gave her a bowl of his white creamy milk, apologizing for seeing her without any plot armor. However, as she began swallowing Tiger's white murky liquid, Ellen grabbed him, screaming at him to remember he was hers, but realized that everyone was staring at them. With Lurie having grown sick of them, she told Tiger that he was a kind man, but realized that he was Ellen's dog. So after she began to leave, Ellen told Alicia to strengthen their border, as she thought Lurie would be waging war against them soon. And just as she predicted, Lurie assembled an army on Ellen's border the next day, putting Ellen's troops between her army and Duke Thenardier's forces. From the very start, it had been Thenardier's intentions to restrict Ellen's movement by having Lurie distract her the entire time. As the days went on, Lurie's troops continued advancing towards them, but Ellen's army prepared for battle. Inside Lurie's camp, after she discovered that Ellen's troops were marching towards them, she said they would annihilate her army, as she had no intentions of dissolving her alliance with Duke Thenardier. At the same time, Ellen's forces were waiting on the west side of the Tatra Mountains, even as the snow continued falling. So as the battle began, they blew their horns and started firing arrows while charging at each other. As they clashed, annihilating one another, Tiger launched an arrow into a soldier's foot. But even as they fought till sunset, both sides eventually retreated without a victory. That night in Ellen's camp, as she told Tiger and Alicia that she would personally lead their forces the next day, she said they would destroy Lurie's troops. However, when it was morning, Alicia revealed that Lurie's forces had completely withdrawn and were holed up in the Tatra Mountains. Hearing these words, Ellen realized they had been outsmarted, because with only a single path leading to the citadel in the mountains, they could easily be annihilated from the defensive positions. That same day, as Tiger and Ellen decided to scout the citadel, Ellen told him that it would be nearly impregnable, as the gates had been reinforced with ice, but she was confident that she would find a way inside. As her army began attacking, all of their attempts ended up a waste, as they failed to gain a single inch. So when it was night, Ellen began saying that she would fly with Arefar's power and would wipe out all the enemies. But as Alicia thought it was too dangerous, Tiger decided to suggest a new plan. The following day, he was already traveling across the mountains with a bear hide, and remembered that Alicia had told him that it was commonly used by hunters. She thought it was the perfect disguise, and had put it on his body. As Tiger continued over the mountains, he spotted a fox before him, but as he released a shot, he found it dead with an extra arrow. Before he could claim his prize, Lurie appeared, wondering if he launched the first shot. When he revealed that he did, he showed her the distance he fired from, and launched another arrow into a heap of snow to convince her that he did. At sunset, they took shelter together, and Lurie began wondering why he wouldn't take off his pelt. But Tiger told her that his village forbade it. Wanting to have him on her side, Lurie asked him to join her army, but Tiger said he could not abandon his homeland. The following day at dawn, Lurie was ready to head back to the citadel, so as she waved him off, she told him that she would never forget him. However, Tiger followed her tracks to the citadel, and as he reached the edge of the mountain, he saw the citadel before him. So the next day, he returned with the troops, and having noticed that the rear was lightly guarded, he thought the men could easily sneak through the defenses. By the time they arrived, they realized that the rear had been fortified with barriers, but as Ellen told Tiger that they would continue with their initial plan, she said she could blow away the gate. After waiting until sunset, Ellen began running at the gate, and as she drew her sword, summoning its wind mana, she launched Lay Hadamos to destroy everything in her path. However, as it dispersed before her eyes, she realized it only dented the gate, but as the defense forces launched arrows at her, Tiger saved her from getting isekai'd. Angered by his interference, Ellen said this was their only chance to win the war, but Tiger realized what he had to do, and asked Arefar to lend him its powers. As a cold wind blew on his face, Tiger pulled an arrow, and a powerful beam radiated around his bow. So as he launched it, the beam drilled into the gate, and as it destroyed it, Ellen commanded her men to charge inside. Immediately, they followed her, but an assassin watched them on the side, and just as Lurie discovered the gate was broken, Tiger began launching arrows inside. With Ellen leading the front lines, Tiger killed an archer to cover her, but when Lurie appeared before them, wondering if she came to get her ass kicked, Ellen vowed to make her eat her words. As she charged first, Lurie readied her spear, but as they clashed weapons, Ellen swiftly pulled back. Immediately, Lurie went on the offense, but as Ellen dodged her attacks, Lurie stabbed her spear to summon chunks of ice, but Ellen was a step ahead of her and unleashed ley Hadamos to destroy them. Even so, Lurie froze the ground with the slightest contact, but as she activated her spear to summon a wall of ice, they charged at each other again, both unleashing powers that erupted into a massive energy beam. The sight of their incredible powers left the men in awe, but with Ellen and Lurie having grown exhausted, the assassin landed inside the pool, wanting to take advantage of their distraction, but got isekai'd instead. With Tiger having fired the arrow, Lurie realized he was the hunter she came across, but Tiger was wondering who the target was. After getting a resounding slap for his trickery, Lurie decided to ask Tiger why he saved her. However, the simp told her that he was only repaying her for her company, and said his entire purpose for going to war was to protect his homeland. As Lurie heard these words, she thought he was honest, and announced that she would be neutral in the war. This guaranteed that Ellen could focus her attack on the Nardier's army, but the Nardier had already moved on to his next plan. Using a royal writ, he managed to bring a new faction into play, in the form of the royal knight named Roland, the most feared commander in Brune who could single-handedly slay thousands of enemies. Clad in black armor, he wielded the invisible sword Durandal, and had been the protector of Brune's western border. But after receiving an order from the king of Brune, he realized he had been tasked with annihilating Tiger and all his allies. Meanwhile, Tiger was enjoying a break from the wars, and with 5,000 Zected knights in his army, he had returned to Alsace. Eventually, Lord Mine decided to support him with more men, so as they returned to war, advancing to the western top of Territoire, they formed a base 5 miles away from Duke the Nardier's territory. A few days later, after they moved on to a new town called Saunier, Tiger sat in a meeting with the heads of the local village, so as they told him that they were happy hosting him, they promised to provide whatever he needed. After the meeting, Tiger began wondering what news was circulating in the capital, but when Mine revealed that he was returning to his estate, he told Tiger to enjoy himself while he still had the chance. So that day, Tiger decided to lie down at a stream, enjoying the beautiful sound of nature, but when Luni flew on him, sending him rolling down into the water, he realized it was Ellen's pet. But it flew away, and a girl came out of the bush without any plot armor. As she began chasing the dragon, Tiger thought his worthless eyes were about to make him a man with all the plot he was seeing. But the girl had not noticed his presence, and bumped right into him.
God damn it! You can't make this shit up!
Later in the tent, as Sophia introduced herself to Tiger, he apologized for climaxing in 5 seconds, but Sophia told him that it was also her first time. As she began saying that she came on official business, she told them that the King of Brune was ill and could not meet him. She had been sent as an envoy by King Victor to clarify their stance in the war, but discovered that Tiger was being accused of treason and had been stripped of his rank and title. That evening, as Tiger sharpened his arrow, he began wondering how he got branded a traitor. But at the same time in the tent, Sophia was telling Ellen that the other war maidens were keeping away from the war, but admitted she was worried that Tiger's allies would abandon him since he was called a traitor. The following day, as Bertrand reported that the Order of Navarre were drawing closer to their camp, he said the army was being led by the Dark Knight, so Ellen's troops took up position in the middle of the Orange Plains, ready for battle. As Roland revealed his sword, the blade extended above him, so as he began charging forward, his men followed. With a rage, Roland sliced through Ellen's army, whipping his blade with all his might. So when Ellen realized he was a threat, she charged at him, but the clash of their swords nearly made her lose her balance. Just then, a group of soldiers began rushing at Roland, but as he slayed them with a single strike, he began attacking Ellen, and his overwhelming strength made her fall off her horse. As Ellen realized she couldn't beat him, she narrowly dodged his attacks, but when Tiger appeared with his bow, Roland charged at him. Looking to end his life, Roland swung his blade, but as Tiger launched an arrow into the clouds, he managed to rescue Ellen. Immediately, Roland began pursuing them, determined to capture him. but the arrow returned to pierce his horse. At that moment, Roland realized it wasn't a misfire, but as Ellen discovered that Tiger was wounded, Roland's men began rushing at them. However, Sophia appeared at that moment, so as she sent their horse away, wanting to offer a distraction, she awakened the power of her scepter, activating Falvarna. Her scepter released a golden light that cast a strong barrier to repel them. But as Roland remained on his feet, realizing that Sophia was trying to stall him, he told her that he couldn't be stopped. At that moment, her scepter glowed to signal that he was a powerful opponent. But as she tried to strengthen her barrier, Roland destroyed it with a single strike. Immediately, he rushed at her, but as she blocked all of his attacks, she activated Murishim and vanished before his eyes. Luckily, Ellen and Tiger had gone far off, but as Roland's soldier reported that Tiger's backup team had ambushed their rear. With Mashes leading the front lines, Roland directed his men to get into formation. However, he remembered that he had tried seeing the king after receiving the order to eliminate Tiger's army. But Duke Gainlon told him that he was too sick, and Duke the Nardier had promised to take charge of his battles with other insurgents. Roland thought they were a pair of ugly lying asses, but concluded on eliminating Tiger so that he could return to the king's palace. Later that night, when Ellen arrived at Tiger's tent, she told Tita to get her ass outside, saying she wanted to talk to her man. So with the ugly bitch having no plot to fight back, she decided to leave, and as Ellen was happy to be alone with Tiger, she told him to feel the pulsing of her plot, and promised to lead their army in his absence. That same night, while she was staring at the camp, Sophia appeared next to her, and as she realized that Ellen had concluded on using her dragon art technique against Roland, she offered to support her in the war. At the same time in Roland's tent, his assistant named Richard told him that Tiger was only trying to defend his homeland. But as he wondered if they should carry on with their attack, Roland said they would proceed as planned. At dawn the next day, Ellen and her troops began advancing across the river, but as Tiger woke up, he noticed Tita sleeping on the side. As he spotted his bow, he remembered how he got wounded, so as he began wondering how he could protect his homeland, he sensed a mystical power inside it. Before long, he began following its direction while Tita accompanied him, and when he grew weak from his injury, she stayed by his side. As they continued, the bow began glowing. But as they noticed the entrance before them, they realized they had arrived at an ancient temple. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Ellen and her troops were ready for war, having left their wounded men, and successfully crossed the river before sunrise. They had taken up positions facing south, but the Order of Navarre had assumed a crescent formation. According to their strategy, their first squad would chip away at Ellen's advance guard, while the second squad would attack from the flank. The third squad would swing wide, launching multiple attacks every time Ellen's troops tried pursuing the two squads, until eventually annihilating their entire army. Just then, Richard commanded the first squad to attack. But back at the temple, Tiger and Tita noticed the weird drawings on the walls, so as they arrived at a carved maiden, Tita revealed that it was the image of Turnafar, the goddess who presided over darkness and death. With Tiger still wanting power, he decided to ask the goddess if she summoned him, but as Turnafar began speaking through Tita's body, she told him that he came on his own because he wanted her power. At the same time, Roland's men were destroying Ellen's army, so as Turnafar told him that his allies were being killed, she wondered if he would continue staring like a loser. Noticing his reluctance, she tried leaving, but as she offered to give him her power anyway, she told him to prove his resolve. Levitating before his eyes, she told him that she would grant him her power if his bow acknowledged him. But when Tiger wondered if she would leave Tita's body, Turnafar told him that this bitch was hers. Determined to free Tita, Tiger decided to aim his arrow at her, as an energy beam radiated around his bow. So as he steadied his aim and fired the shot, it stopped on the tip of Tita's skin, and the beam consumed the goddess out of her body. With Tita restored, she began trembling from the shock, but Tiger covered her up with his cloak. Before long, he began charging towards the battle, but remembered that Turnafar had told him that she was looking forward to seeing him unleash his new power. On the battlefield, Roland's army were sinking, but as Alicia directed her men to attack them, they killed the men with arrows. Before the battle began, they had used sandbags to change the path of the river, making it flow onto the plain. So with Ellen having anticipated that it would turn the battlefield into a muddy swamp, she had said they could easily draw the enemies in. So as she managed to parry Roland's attacks, she began running off, but with Roland already realizing she intended to draw him away from his main force, he decided to pursue her anyway. At the same time, Tiger was drawing closer to the battle, but as Ellen barely dodged Roland's attacks, she unleashed her wind magic to rise by 100 feet. Before Roland could counter her, Sophia rushed towards him, casting a spell that overwhelmed him with a flurry of yellow lights, distracting him long enough for Ellen to unleash Leihadimos. As they heard his screams in the cold wind of Arafar, Sophia wondered if he was dying, but Roland cut the wind with a slash of his blade. However, he had grown exhausted, but as he advanced forward anyway, Tiger fired a shot from a mile away. As he stepped down from his horse, Roland decided to ask him if he truly invited the Zected army into their territory, so as Tiger affirmed that he did. He said he hired them to protect Alsace. However, Roland thought his excuse was irrelevant, and said he couldn't allow insurgents to run free in their country. As he held his blade with both hands, saying he was ready to fight them with all his strength, Ellen thought they were screwed. At that moment, Tiger grew sick from his injury, but when Roland rushed at them, he managed to aim at him with an arrow. His determination to protect Alsace gave him strength, so as he released the arrow with an energy beam, Roland tried slashing it, but began wondering who was truly on the right side. Concluding that he was protecting the people, he managed to divide the arrow, causing the ground to erupt before them. As the smoke cleared, Roland managed to stand again, but when Ellen wondered how it was possible, he fell on his knees, conceding defeat. He had lost all strength to raise his blade, and as he realized he was on the wrong side, with doubt having plagued him all along, he told them that he surrendered, but Tiger passed out. That same day, the Order of Navarre withdrew from the war, with Roland having already lost half of his men. So as Richard signed the peace treaty, he agreed on burying their men on the western half of the hill, while Gerald, who represented Ellen's troops, agreed on burying their own men on the eastern half. At the same time, Tiger and his allies were in a meeting with Roland, but when he told them that he would be leaving for the capital, he said he wanted to see the king. However, Tiger tried warning him that it was dangerous, but Roland said he must make amends for attacking them. The following day, Ellen told Tiger that she was returning to Zected, and as she explained that her best friend, who was also a war maiden, was under attack by another war maiden, she said she needed to defend her. They had promised each other many years ago that they would support one another if they were ever in danger, and Ellen thought she owed her the promise. With Sasha having lost the ability to walk on her own, Ellen said she needed her help now more than ever, so Tiger told her that he would lead the troops until her return. A few days later, when Roland arrived at the palace, demanding to see the king, he was led into a private room, but as he tried kicking the door, he realized he had been locked inside. Just then, he began hearing Gainlon's voice over the PA system, and as he accused him of being a failure, he released thousands of venomous bees into the room, saying that death was his punishment. Meanwhile, Ellen and Alicia were already heading to Zected with more than half of the army, so as Sophia bid Tiger goodbye, she decided to follow their track. Later that day, Mashes told Tiger that Roland had been executed, but at the same time in the castle, the Nardier was angry at Gainlon for killing him. As he wondered how they would protect their country's western border, Gainlon told him to worry about protecting his own borders, as a large army of Muazinalans were advancing towards his kingdom. Meanwhile, the Muazinal army had already invaded Duke the Nardier's territory, and were gaining more ground as they traveled. They were a powerful army who practiced slavery, and would invade other countries to plunder it for their resources, and after making it to the first town, they destroyed all the homes and took the people captive. They were an army of 20,000 soldiers, but in response to their attack, the Nardier decided to split his forces into two, and headed south with a contingent of 7,000 soldiers. He had created a plan to lure them deeper into the country, and would destroy the Muazinalans, even after sending 13,000 men of his army to protect the capital from Gainlon's invasion. All the while, Tiger was trying to create his own strategy for the war, but remembered that Roland had left his sword in his care as proof that he recognized his cause as just. A few hours later, he decided to tell his commanders that he would be heading southeast with his men, saying that their goal was to survive and protect other towns. When Mine wondered why they couldn't strengthen their defenses instead, Tiger told him that their defenses could never hold out the enemies, seeing as they had very few men and no other armies would support them. So the following day, Tiger set out with his 1,700 men, leading them to a new territory. But Tita was praying to the gods for their safe return. All the while, the Muazinalan army were leading the civilians, but a man passed out, and Tiger grew angry at the sight. He wished to save all the people, but with the army's overwhelming number, he began wondering how he could awaken Turnafar's power. However, as they decided to leave, and began walking through the mountains, they noticed a group of soldiers pursuing a girl. But as she tripped, arrows penetrated their skulls. When Tiger appeared before the girl, he noticed she was afraid, so as he told her his name, he said he was a Brune man. These words brought relief into her heart, and as she realized who he was, she passed out in his arms. At sunset, when the Muazidolan army were about to make camp, a messenger told General Kasim that 200 Brunish soldiers had been attacking their left flank with stones and arrows. So as the general told him to eliminate them with 3,000 men, he said their main force would have fewer than 2,000 knights. So under his orders, a force of 3,000 soldiers gave chase to the Brunish riders, but after passing through a narrow choke point, they arrived at a dead end. However, the soldiers realized they were outnumbered by Tiger's army, and as the fear made them lose their shit, Tiger's men capitalized on their distraction to attack them, eventually slaying every last one of them. But when the battle was over, Tiger was glad every soldier was a retarded moron in this anime, as his men began collecting their resources. As the days passed, Tiger's troops continued chipping away at the Muazidolan army, whittling their numbers down to 18,000. But in a desperate attempt to keep them off, Kasim decided to execute 10 of the hostages, and went on to organize a unit of 3,000 soldiers, positioning them ahead of its main force. He was certain that Tiger's army could never attack them head-on, given how outnumbered they were, but Tiger would eventually appear with 600 men. However, Tiger began saying that he came to execute them for abducting innocent civilians, but Kasim directed his men to shoot him once he was in range. At that moment, a large army appeared on the mountains, but as Tiger commanded them to attack, Kasim began saying their army was useless. From the distance, Tiger launched an arrow that flew for miles, before nailing him in the head, while another killed his assistant. As the sight of their dead general made the soldiers lose heart, they began running away, but Tiger commanded his men to eliminate them. A few hours later, when Tiger found all the captives, he decided to free them, and a girl thanked him for avenging her father. That night in their camp, Gerald told Tiger that they still had about 1,500 men, but said that over 400 were gravely injured. Just then, Rurik appeared before him, and after revealing that another Muazidolan general was leading an advance party of 30,000 men, Tiger realized they were screwed. Wanting to protect the civilians, Tiger began escorting them. But when a messenger revealed that a unit of Muazidolan soldiers were getting closer, revealing they were 4,000 men, Tiger began rushing with a few men of his own. However, the army were only a few meters away, and even as they launched arrows at them, Tiger realized they weren't slowing down. Just then, he spotted a new army, but as he noticed their banners, he realized they were Luri Ludmilla's troops. Meanwhile, Ellen and Alicia had arrived in Sasha's castle, but when Ellen wondered who was waging a war on her army, Sasha told her that it was the Flash Princess of the Thunder Swirl, Elizaveta Famina. When Ellen wondered why she was doing so, Sasha explained that Alyssa was accusing her soldiers of deliberately leading a group of pirates toward her army, and due to this, had broken off contact with her, only to return with an assault on her army. As Ellen heard these words, she thought that Eliza was an ugly flat-ass bitch, so as she offered to take over the fight, she vowed to kick Eliza's disgusting ass back to her territory. Meanwhile, in the Muazidolan camp, the Supreme Commander named Coconuts in Barbados was wondering why Luri's army had decided to ally themselves with Tiger's troops. But as he thought he had a chance with a war maiden, he directed his envoy to offer his support to Luri, saying he would join her forces if she was beautiful. At the same time, Luri was telling Tiger that he looked far more pathetic than she remembered, and said his useless face would only get him used. When Tiger wondered why she was helping him, Luri told him that she wanted a reward in return. But when he asked for her army, she said his desperation would make him appear weak and useless. Even so, Tiger begged for her help once again, saying he had nothing to repay her with, but Luri thought he had many things she wanted. She never forgot how he blasted a hole through the gate of the citadel, and wished he would blast through her hole as well.
What do you mean by that?
After he decided to show her his sacred bow, Luri thought the weapon was too useless, but Tiger revealed that it was his family's heirloom. However, he couldn't control its power, and as he explained that it occasionally made him black out, Luri said she wanted to black out under his massive load.
I beg your pardon?
Before deciding to shake his hand in partnership. That night, when Tiger checked the girl they earlier rescued, she told him that her name was Regin, and decided to ask him for a favor. Meanwhile, a hot plotful bitch was waiting for battle, so as her assistant arrived, telling her that a cavalry unit with 3,000 men was spotted in the south, she knew it was Ellen. Her name was Alyssa. But with Ellen leading a united forces of her own army and Sasha's, they were ready for war. With both armies staring from opposing sides of the plain, Alyssa began charging with her men, so as Ellen drew her sword, she commanded her forces to attack. Before long, she began pursuing Alyssa and activating her sword's phantasm. She launched Hadamos towards her, but with Alyssa having leaped away, she unleashed the power in her whip to strike the ground. As Ellen leaped back 200 yards, Alyssa was confident of winning and told Ellen that she couldn't beat her, but on the other side, Alicia was cheering her men to keep fighting. As Ellen unleashed a light tornado, she used her wind's mana to accelerate towards Alyssa, dodging her lightning blast. But as their energy beams collided, Alyssa's overpowered Ellen's, sending her stumbling across the ground. However, she wouldn't surrender, so as she summoned a stronger wind, she unleashed Hadamos, but Alyssa met it with a lightning blast that devoured the wind, before erupting into an explosion. When the smoke cleared, Eliza realized that the eruption repelled her by a few yards, but as she noticed that Ellen was still on the same spot, she realized that she got the advantage on her. However, when Ellen was looking to end her, Alyssa told her that Thenardier and Gainlon had prepared their armies. Even though she didn't know Gainlon's intentions, she revealed that a Muazinalin raiding party of 40,000 men had invaded Brune. The entire purpose of her attack had been to lure her away from the battle, so with that purpose already fulfilled, she suggested they seal a contract to end their fight and refocus their attacks on the pirates. With Ellen eager to end this, she decided to agree, but as she told her to apologize to Sasha, Eliza promised to do so. By the following day, Ellen explained everything to Sasha, but soon began returning to Brune. Meanwhile in Brune, Lori was suggesting a plan to defeat the Muazinalin army in a single battle. But as Tiger thought they couldn't possibly win, Luri suggested they take out the Supreme Commander, seeing as they couldn't cut their supply lines. After she revealed a strategy, Tiger thought they had a chance, but as he wondered why Luri was really helping them, she said she wanted a special reward in return. Meanwhile, the Muazinalin army were marching deeper into Brune, but were traveling in 7 discrete units with a set distance between them, so that in the case of a surprise attack, they would easily eliminate the enemies. That night in the Muazinalin camp, the envoy told Barbaros that the War Maiden was asking him to retreat. But as a scout revealed that Tiger's army were camped behind the hills, he said they found the camp of the 2,000 civilians who were originally captured by Kasim. At that moment, Barbaros concluded on his decision and declared a war on Luri. At the same time, Tiger's troops had occupied the hills, and as he was convinced that they would win, it began snowing. By the time it was morning, the Muazinalin army had spread across the plain, and as they began the battle by chasing down Tiger's front flank, another unit laid siege to the mountain stronghold. They were broken into 4 divisions, but while the last 3 divisions and even the main force were pursuing the civilians, Tiger's and Luri's troops launched a surprise attack from the snow-covered hill. But as they shot arrows, Luri released a blast of ice that crushed them to pieces, so as Tiger fired arrows of his own. They leaped down from the hill and began annihilating the enemies. When Gerald hurled Tiger a new quiver, Luri wondered if he was safe on his own, but Tiger told her to watch his back. At Barbaros' tent, after he discovered that his troops were ambushed from the second hill, he realized they had fallen right into Luri's trap. But at the same time, another unit who were pretending to be civilians noticed that Tiger's main unit had begun their assault, so Rorik commanded the men to join them. The 2,000 disguised soldiers had engaged the Muazinalin's 5th Division, supported by Tiger's unit, but all the while, the actual civilians were hiding in the hilltop fortress. Because the previous night, Tiger had asked them to play along with his plans, and as one of them stood up in support, the others had eventually agreed. As Tiger and Luri continued the onslaught, they began closing in on Barbaros' main unit, but the 6th Division had changed direction to go after them. With Tiger growing desperate, he commanded his flying column to intercept them, but the men had already grown exhausted, and Tiger knew they were at their breaking point. As the Muazinalin army caught up with them, they began slaughtering the unit, while the 6th Division continued closing in on the combined forces. As Luri and Tiger continued killing the enemies, Barbaros' main unit moved further away from the battle, having deployed his 6th and 7th units to the sides of Tiger's forces in an attempt to surround them. Barbaros kept a measured distance from Tiger's bow. Meanwhile, Tiger's hand was starting to cramp, but as Gerald gave him a new quiver, he told Luri to escape while she could. However, she told him that she was no quitter, and as she continued slaying the army, she said she would fight until the end. Just then, a new army arrived, and as their commanders told them to kill the Muazinalins, they attacked them from all sides. When Barbaros discovered this, he wondered how Tiger gathered additional troops, but his scout told him that they were reinforcements. At the same time, one of the commanders was calling for Tiger, so as Luri raised her spear to draw his attention, she continued her slaughter, while his horse bashed a loser's face. At the same time, the second commander said his name was Shay, and as he revealed that he also came with 1,500 men, he said they were now under his command. When the third commander appeared, introducing himself as August, he told Tiger that he had 2,000 knights in his army, and that they all wanted to support him. As they all rode off, Lurie managed to protect Tiger, knowing he was caught up in his emotions. But when she wondered if he wanted to retreat, he told her that he would continue fighting, as he caught another quiver. At Barbaros's camp, after he discovered that the reinforcements were 5,000 men, he thought they still had a shot at winning, and commanded his 4th Division to attack their flank along with his main unit. So as they charged forward and clashed with the reinforcements, Barbaros thought they would win. But a new scout told him that 3,000 new soldiers were coming from the northwest, with Mashes leading this army. As he realized his death was near, he directed his men to retreat, but 6,000 of his soldiers had already been slain. That night, when he realized that he had lost 30% of his men, he knew that he needed to wait for reinforcements to arrive. However, at dawn the next day, when a soldier told him that their fleet in the southern border had been sunk by Duke Thenardier's forces, Barbaros commanded his men to withdraw, accepting Tiger had defeated him. That night, a loser began praising Tiger for their victory, but the poor dude was too exhausted to listen to his nonsense. However, that same night, when Lurie told him that the Musaidalin army were withdrawing to their country, Tiger passed out on her, and she realized he was extremely exhausted from all the battles. The following day, as cold air from Lurie's dragon gear woke her up, she realized that Ellen was close.
あら、お早いお帰りね、エレオノーラ。
エレン。
Later that night, while Tiger and Ellen were staring at the stars, he decided to apologize for getting her men killed. But Ellen told him to lay down by her side and held his hand to show her support. When she wondered if he regretted the battles he had fought, Tiger told her that he didn't, so she asked him to pray for those who were dead. A few days later, while Tiger was asleep, a hot girl ripped a hole through spacetime to see him.
Sensational.
The girl was a war maiden named Valentina, and as she hoped to see Tiger again, she cut another hole through spacetime to exit. For 4 days, Tiger and his troops hid in Fort Perchep, a town outside the Nardier's borders, which was made possible through his new alliance with Emil. All through their travels, Ellen and Lurie had followed him wherever he went. But with Ellen having grown sick of seeing Lurie's disgusting flat ass, she began wondering why she hadn't returned to Zekted already. So she decided to thank her for supporting Tiger during her absence, but said that they didn't need surfboards here, and asked her to return to her territory. However, Lurie told her that their king had asked her to keep an eye on her, and said that Tiger still owed her a favor. Meanwhile, Tiger could still feel the softness of Valentina's plot. But as Mashes thought he was merely stressed out from all his duties, Tiger began wondering why they were meeting so early anyway. Mashes told him that the soldiers were spreading rumors in the camp, and said they were accusing a girl of looking exactly like the prince. But Tiger wondered who the girl was. Just then, Regin entered the room, but with Tiger having known she wanted to reveal a secret, he told her to tell everyone. As Regin began saying that she was actually known as Rignaz, she said her full name was Rignaz Estelle de Charles. But when they realized it was the name of the prince, Alicia asked her to prove that she was truly him. Without hesitating, Regin began telling Tiger that they first met 6 years ago at Vincennes, and as she went on to reveal that they met after slipping out of a hunting festival, she said she had watched him kill a bird, and had eaten out his meat afterwards. As Tiger heard these words, he realized she was the prince, but the shock of this discovery caused Mashes to pass out. A few minutes later, after he had recovered, Regin began explaining that she was attacked by an assassin during a night raid, and was passed off as dead. When Ellen wondered why she pretended to be a boy, Regin revealed that it was her only chance of succeeding the throne, as girls were considered useless in the kingdom. Realizing she wasn't safe, Lurie suggested they hide her in this city, so as Ellen went on to say that no one would believe that the prince was actually a girl, Tiger wished that he could see the king. Just then, he decided to ask if Regin could prove that the king was truly her father. So Regin revealed there was a secret door in Lutetia that could only be opened by the royal family, and would lead directly into Brune's capital. That was everything Tiger wanted to hear, so he decided they would head to Lutetia. Meanwhile, the Nardier's sorcerer had managed to tame half a dozen dragons, and as he said they would easily destroy a war maiden. The Nardier knew he was ready for battle. At the same time, Gainlon realized that his army would be easily wiped out from the capital, but as he was happy that he had successfully made the king sick, he wondered who would win the battle between Tiger and the Nardier. The next day, the Nardier's dragons destroyed all of Gainlon's army, but when Steed told him that Tiger's troops were heading towards Artesium, he revealed that the princess was with them. Figuring they were going to the cave shrine, the Nardier vowed to annihilate them all. But at the same time in Zected, King Victor decided to send Sophia as an emissary to Brune, saying he wanted her to end Ellen's war. However, the following day, Mashes revealed that Gainlon had burned down his capital. But after Alicia told them that the Nardier's army were marching northward towards them, Tiger said they would continue towards Artesium anyway. So as his troops headed out, the Nardier's army waited on the Villacresnes plains, but Tiger's army of 20,000 men were ready to face off against the Nardier's 24,000 soldiers. During the battle, while the central columns of both armies were clashing, Ellen and Lurie pushed forward on the right flank, as they broke through the Nardier's left flank to close in on the dragons. So as the girls ran at the monsters, Ellen activated her sword's phantasm, so that when Lurie unleashed her ice powers, she supported it with her wind magic, allowing the ice to pierce the dragons and destroy them. However, two large dragons continued advancing forward, but when the Nardier realized that the maidens were too powerful, he commanded his men to attack them once they killed the dragons. At the same time, Ellen launched a wind blast, but as a barrier repelled it, she managed to activate Vernon to escape their attack, before striking the dragon. However, she realized its body was solid, but as she leaped across the field, Lurie unleashed her wind magic once more, but watched it disintegrate before her eyes. Immediately, a dragon spewed fire on them, so as Ellen managed to save Lurie, taking the flames with her body, the dragon spewed more fires, but Lurie shielded it with a wall of ice. At the same time, Tiger and his troops were still fighting, but by the time it was noon, both armies retreated for a break. While plotting a new strategy, Ellen revealed that the Nardier's sorcerer must have cancelled out their dragon arts, but as she thought there was a way around it, Lurie figured she had come up with a plan. Convinced they would win, Ellen told Tiger to focus on fighting the Nardier's army, and Lurie told him to have faith in them. After their break was over, the armies prepared for battle again. But after a scout told the Nardier that Tiger's central column were carrying sticks, Steed thought they were challenging them to a melee battle in a desperate attempt to stop them from using their dragons. However, the Nardier told them to continue as planned, so as the dragons led the front lines, the troops flanked them on both sides. Immediately, Tiger commanded his men to withdraw, so as they headed off, Ellen and Lurie decided to face off with the dragons. As Tiger's men donned their armor, Gerald and Bertrand began heading to the battlefield with several bunches of quivers. With Tiger's central column entirely armed, the soldiers divided into two units to attack the left and right flanks, while Lurie and Ellen confronted the dragons. As Tiger's men began hurling rocks, the enemy commander wondered if they had lost their mind, but an arrow pierced his skull, so when Tiger launched another arrow to kill the second commander, the soldiers began running away. At the same time, Ellen was flying with the aid of a whirlwind, so as she stabbed one of the dragons, she lured it into spilling flames on the other. Utilizing this advantage, Lurie permeated the flames to pierce its body, so as Ellen cast wind magic to lift her beyond the dragon, Lurie returned to stab it in the head. Just then, the other dragon knocked Ellen across the field, but as Lurie managed to stop it with her spear, she repelled it with all of her strength. At that moment, Ellen activated her sword's phantasm once again, so as the girls began rushing at the same time, they evaded its attack, and Lurie released a rain of ice crystals on it. Just then, Ellen appeared on its blind side, and as she launched down with her sword, she stabbed into its body. Without letting go, she activated Lay Hadamos, and as the wind filled up the dragon's insides, blood exploded out of its body. So as the sun began setting, the girls sat in exhaustion, but Ellen thought the battle was now won. A few days later, after they camped in a new village, Ellen and the girls began walking around the place, but when they arrived inside Tiger's tent, they realized he was deeply asleep. As Ellen wondered how they could wake him up, she revealed that Tiger had once told her that he would awaken if he ever sensed that an animal was about to attack him.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
A few minutes later, as they were about to have breakfast, Ellen began wondering what their plan was, hoping they could crush the Thenardier's army. So as Tiger said, they would head for Artesium. He suggested they pass through the secret entrance to validate that Regine was the princess. As Alicia agreed, Ellen thought that the Thenardier would be condemned afterwards. When Tiger asked Regine how they could find the secret entrance, she revealed that their destination was a place called Charles St. Groll, also known as the Holy Grotto. According to the histories, the founder of their country, who was named Charles, had decided to become king after he received divine guidance from inside. And for this reason, the Holy Grotto was renowned as Brune's birthplace. As she went on to explain that there were 3 entrances leading to the Holy Grotto, she told them that the first was the central district of Artesium, the second was in the Temple of Mosia, while the third was in the public cemetery to the northeast. With the closest being the Temple of Mosia, Alicia suggested they head there, but Tiger told them that he would leave with the princess. By the next day, they camped in another site, but when Bertrand entered Tiger's tent, he asked to accompany him to the temple, saying that his place was by his side. Not wanting to turn him down, Tiger accepted, but told him to run away if they got into danger. The following day, as they headed towards the Temple of Mosia, they soon spotted it in the distance. After arriving inside, Regine opened a hole in the floor, and as she activated the lock, the men pushed a giant statue to reveal the secret entrance. Before long, they started walking through a tunnel, so as Regine explained that the city was once a stronghold for the powerful families ruling the area, she said this place was created as their escape tunnel. Just then, they came across an ancient painting, so as Regine revealed that it was a depiction of the Battle of the Gods with a dragon, she said it was in their history. As she went on to explain that the 3-pillar goddess were created to serve the dragons, she said the mural was proving that the Holy Grotto was close. However, when they sensed the presence of enemies, Ellen and Tiger charged forward, readying their weapons instantly. So with the Thenardier and his army already standing before them, he revealed that he came to kill the princess. Immediately, Bertrand ran away with Regine, but Steed sliced Tiger's arrow, so as Ellen cut through the enemies, the men began to fight. Just then, the Thenardier commanded Steed to kill the princess, but when Rurik told Ellen that he would hold back the enemies, she rushed forward, leaping 200 yards to slice through the army before running onto the Thenardier. As they clashed blades, Ellen went on the offense, but the Thenardier landed a heavy strike that repelled her. At the same time, the stain was cutting down the soldiers, but as one tried to end his life, an arrow pierced his face. Just then, they noticed Steed approaching, but as Shiny Baldy began attacking him, he parried Tiger's arrow without breaking focus. However, he thought Tiger was impressive at his ability to hit his target even in the dimly lit cave, so he asked the soldiers to stand down, revealing that he only intended to kill the princess and himself. On the far side, the Thenardier revealed that he chose to fight them inside this cave because he wanted to annihilate them all. But as he hit Ellen with a heavy strike that sent her falling hard, she charged back. So as they continued their attacks, Ellen released her wind magic to maintain a safe distance. But when the ground began trembling, they realized the cave was about to seal. At that moment, earth began falling, but out of mere instinct, Ellen started charging back, as the Thenardier commanded his men to retreat. However, Steed continued advancing, but as Tiger told Rurik to escape with Regine, they rushed off together. Just then, Ellen arrived, but as she caught his signal to escape, Steed charged at Tiger, parrying off his arrow, and nearly cutting him down as he stumbled to the ground. Noticing Tiger was in danger, Ellen tried running back, but as the earth blocked her path, Bertrand began running towards him. Tiger's whole life was already flashing before his eyes, but as Steed brought down his sword, Bertrand took the blow in his stead, but earth rained down on them all. By the time Tiger woke up, he realized he could move his muscles, but discovered that Steed had been crushed under rubble. As he began searching for Bertrand, he found him lying on the ground. But when the man realized he was alive, Tiger noticed he was losing blood. At that moment, his memories returned, but as Bertrand began saying that he was happy to see him alive, and was glad that his sacrifice was not in vain, he said he was proud of the man he had become. So with his final breath, he told Tiger to watch over Tita before slipping into nirvana. Meanwhile outside, Ellen, Regine, and the survivors were rushing towards Artesium. But as an energy beam shot into the sky, Ellen thought that Tiger was alive. So as they made their way through the town, they eventually arrived at a pit. But when they spotted Tiger inside, Ellen rushed to help him. Luckily, he was truly alive, and as the relief brought tears to Ellen's eyes, she noticed Bertrand, but discovered he was already dead. That evening, they all sat in sadness at the camp, and the memories continued haunting Tiger's mind. Don't forget to click on the description link to get the special discount CyberGhost VPN is granting to our channel users. This application will protect your data while you browse and give you full access to all blocked content on the internet for only $2.03 a month. Totally risk-free, so check it out. Link in the description. Watch this next video. Till next time, my fellow legendary plot masters.